The night was cold, the kind of cold that bites through skin and makes even strong people shiver. Rain was falling in steady drops, tapping on rooftops, sliding down windows and hitting the empty streets. Street lamps glowed weakly through the mist, their light bending and fading in the rain. The city felt silent, as if the whole world had gone to sleep. But one young man was still awake, walking home after a long day. His name was Daniel, an ordinary human, nothing special in the eyes of the world. He worked a simple job, lived in a small apartment, and dreamed small dreams. But on this night, his life was about to change in a way he could never imagine. Daniel's shoes splashed through puddles as he walked, his coat soaked from the rain. He pulled the hood tighter around his face, just wanting to get home, make some tea, and forget the loneliness that followed him everywhere. But then, as he turned down a quiet street, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. At first he thought it was a girl, a thin figure standing near a broken lamppost, shivering. Her hair stuck to her face, wet from the rain. Her arms were crossed around her body as if trying to hold in whatever warmth she had left. But what caught Daniel's eyes most were her feet. She was barefoot in this freezing night. He felt his stomach tighten. Who would walk without shoes in weather like this? He wanted to walk away, pretend he saw nothing. But something about her made his steps freeze. Something was not normal. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They were silver, like liquid metal, and along her arms, faint blue lines pulsed beneath her skin, like veins filled with light instead of blood. Daniel's breath caught. She wasn't just some lost girl, she was something else. Fear rose in his chest. Every story he had heard about aliens, monsters, or strange beings came rushing into his mind. He should run. He should leave. But as the girl lifted her head, he saw not danger in her eyes. He saw pain, hunger, loneliness, and a kind of desperation he understood too well. She tried to take a step toward him, but the wet ground was rough. Her bare feet pressed against broken glass, sharp stones, and cold water. She flinched with every step but made no sound. Her lips moved, whispering something in a language he could not understand. The sound was soft, almost musical, but full of sadness. Daniel's heart beat faster. His mind screamed at him to leave, but his body did not move. He looked down at his shoes. They were old, worn out, but warm. They were the only barrier between him and the freezing ground. He hesitated. If he gave them away, he would walk home barefoot himself. But looking at her, shivering, fragile, and lost, he knew he could not just walk away. Slowly, he crouched down. Rain poured on his back, dripping from his hood. He untied his laces, his fingers stiff with cold, and pulled the shoes off. His socks touched the wet ground, instantly soaking through, but he ignored the sting. He held out the shoes toward her. The girl tilted her head, confused at first, then her glowing eyes widened. She stepped closer, trembling as if she did not believe what he was doing. Carefully, she slipped her feet inside the shoes. They were too big, but she didn't seem to care. Her shoulders shook, not from the cold anymore, but from something else. Gratitude, relief. Then for the first time she looked straight into his eyes. Her silver gaze pierced through the rain and the dark. She whispered one word, soft but powerful. He did not understand the language, but the way she said it, the tone, the tremble in her voice. He knew what it meant. It was thank you. Tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. For a moment, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years. A connection, a strange bond. It was as if two lonely souls had found each other in the middle of an empty world. Before he could say anything, before he could even ask who she was, she stepped back. The faint blue glow along her arms brightened, wrapping around her body like soft light. And then with a sudden flash, she disappeared into the shadows. Not walking, not running, just gone. Daniel stood there, barefoot in the rain, staring at the empty spot where she had been. His heart pounded, his mind spun with questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why did she look at him like that? And why, deep inside, did he feel that this was not the end? He shivered, but not only from the cold. Something about that encounter had shifted the air around him, like the whole world had changed in a single moment. Daniel finally forced himself to move, walking back home with wet socks and freezing feet. But the image of the barefoot alien girl stayed in his mind, glowing brighter than the street lamps, stronger than the rain. He did not know it yet, but that simple act in giving his shoes to a stranger was about to change not only his life, but the future of Earth itself. The next morning, The city woke to cloudy skies and the smell of wet streets. People rushed to work, cars honked, life went on as if nothing strange had happened the night before. But Daniel could not forget. He sat on the edge of his small bed staring at his bare feet. His shoes were gone, given to the barefoot girl who was not human, who had silver eyes and glowing veins. He had not slept properly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face the way she whispered that one word, the way she vanished in a sudden glow of light. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe his tired brain and the rain played tricks on him. He almost convinced himself until he looked down at his wet socks from last night. They were real. The cold was real. And the missing shoes were real. He pulled on an old pair of sneakers and left for work. On the street, people gathered around newspaper stands and phone screens. Headlines flashed with breaking news. Strange lights over the ocean. Pilots report unidentified craft in the sky. Government denies alien activity. Daniel froze. The reports described glowing objects moving faster than any jet, darting in and out of clouds, then vanishing without trace. He felt a chill run through him. Silver eyes. Glowing veins. Disappearing in light. It was too close, too connected. At his office, whispers spread like wildfire. Co-workers argued about UFOs, some laughed, others looked pale. One man swore his cousin in another city saw a glowing figure walking through a field at night. Another claimed his neighbor's car engine shut down when the lights appeared overhead. Daniel stayed quiet. He knew what he had seen, but he could not explain it. He feared people would call him crazy. That evening, as he returned home, the city felt different. The usual traffic noise was thinner, and the air felt heavy, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Clouds glowed faintly with an unnatural shimmer, as though the sky itself was watching. Walking past the alley where he had met the girl, Daniel slowed down. The street lamp was still broken, wires hanging loose, but something else caught his eye. A faint mark on the wet ground. He bent down. His heart skipped. It was a footprint, not a normal one. The outline was delicate, smaller than his own foot, but glowing softly, as if the ground itself had been burned with light. It faded slowly before his eyes, disappearing into nothing. Daniel's chest tightened. This was no dream. She had been here. When he reached his apartment, he noticed something even stranger. On the doorstep lay a single object, a small piece of fabric, dark and smooth, unlike any cloth he had ever touched. It shimmered faintly, shifting colors when the light hit it. He picked it up and his skin tingled as if tiny sparks ran through his fingers. For a moment he thought it was dangerous, but nothing happened. Instead, he felt a wave of calm wash over him. A whisper echoed faintly in his mind, the same soft voice from last night. He could not understand the words, but the feeling was clear. Gratitude. Daniel closed the door, locked it, and sat down with the fabric in his hands. Questions crashed in his head. Why had she left this? Why him? What did it mean? Later that night, as the city slept, the world changed again. News stations interrupted regular shows with urgent broadcasts. Footage showed enormous shapes moving above the ocean, lights stretching across the horizon. Ships. Not human ships, not planes. Something far greater, far larger. The screen showed one, then five, then dozens of massive objects, silent and dark against the clouds. People screamed in the background, cameras shook, reporters whispered in fear. Daniel's heart pounded. He stood frozen in front of his television. He recognized the glow, the same glow he saw in the girl's veins. The same glow in her eyes. The news anchors tried to calm viewers, repeating government statements. There is no threat. These are natural phenomena. Do not panic. But nobody believed it. Outside, people filled the streets, pointing at the sky. The city lit up with fear. Phones recording, children crying, alarms sounding. Daniel stepped onto his balcony, staring upward. For a moment, he saw them with his own eyes. Massive silhouettes against the clouds, silent, waiting. They did not move to attack. They did not flash weapons. They just hovered, watching as if searching for something, or someone. Daniel's chest tightened. A strange thought rose in his mind, one that made no sense but felt true. They were searching for him. The barefoot girl, the glowing footprints, the strange fabric. None of it was random. His simple act of kindness, giving away his shoes, had connected him to something far beyond Earth, something powerful. The air buzzed louder, electricity crawling over the city. Dogs barked, windows rattled, and the sky pulsed with strange light. Daniel clutched the shimmering fabric, his knuckles white. He did not understand what was coming, but deep down he knew one thing. This was only the beginning. The signs were no longer whispers. They were warnings. And the world was about to change forever. The world was no longer calm. For days, the skies above Earth carried strange shadows. Massive objects hung far beyond the clouds, moving with silent precision. They did not attack, they did not speak, they only waited. Cities filled with fear, governments held emergency meetings, and soldiers stood ready with weapons. But deep inside, everyone knew. No human army could stand against such giants. Daniel watched all of this unfold from his small apartment. Every news channel showed shaky videos of colossal ships hovering over oceans, deserts, and mountains. Some people prayed, some rioted, some locked their doors and refused to come out. But Daniel felt something different. The shimmering fabric he kept hidden under his pillow pulsed with warmth whenever the ships appeared on screen. He could not explain it, but he felt connected, as if the sky was not just watching Earth, it was watching him. One evening, as the sun set behind heavy clouds, Daniel walked to the grocery store. The streets were unusually quiet. People no longer lingered outside. Fear pushed everyone indoors. He carried a small bag of bread and milk, trying to pretend life was normal, when suddenly the air changed. The sky rumbled. Not with thunder, but with something deeper, heavier, as though the heavens themselves were tearing open. Daniel dropped his bag and looked up. Above the city, a vast ship descended slowly through the clouds. Its size made skyscrapers look like toys. Lights flickered along its dark surface, flowing like rivers of fire. It moved with no sound, no engines, no smoke, and only silent power. The ground shook. Alarms blared. People screamed and ran in every direction. Cars crashed as drivers lost control. Soldiers poured into the streets, weapons raised toward the sky. Daniel stood frozen. His heart pounded in his chest, but his legs would not move. He could not run. He could only stare. Then from the belly of the ship, a smaller craft detached, sleek, silver, shaped like a blade of light. It glided downward, heading straight toward the city square. The larger ship remained in the clouds, watching. The smaller craft landed with a soft hum, smoother than any human aircraft. A hiss of steam rose as its door slid open. Out stepped a figure. The crowd fell silent. Soldiers tightened their grips on their rifles. Mothers pulled children close. It was her, the barefoot girl from that rainy night. But she was no longer fragile and shivering. Now she wore garments that shimmered like woven starlight. A cloak of deep silver draped her shoulders, and glowing patterns ran along her arms like living tattoos. Around her stood tall armored beings, their bodies covered in black plates that reflected the streetlights. They carried strange weapons, curved and alive, humming with energy. The girl stepped forward, ignoring the soldiers, ignoring the shouting voices. She moved with calm, with certainty, and then, before the eyes of the entire city, she dropped to one knee. She bowed her head. The soldiers behind her slammed their fists against their chests in unison, a thunderous gesture of respect that echoed through the square. Gasps rippled through the human crowd. Confusion turned to shock. Why would a being from beyond the stars kneel here on Earth in front of a single man? Her glowing silver eyes searched the crowd until they found him. Daniel. His breath caught. He wanted to disappear, to hide, but his legs carried him forward, step by step, as if pulled by invisible strings. The people around him stepped aside, their eyes wide, whispering his name in disbelief. Daniel stopped just a few feet away from her. His throat felt dry, his hands shook, and his mind screamed questions he could not form. The girl raised her head slowly. For the first time, her voice carried across the square, amplified not by machines but by a strange resonance that touched every ear and every heart. Protector of the weak. The words rang out, heavy with meaning. Daniel blinked. The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Soldiers lowered their guns in hesitation. Cameras flashed, broadcasting the moment to the world. He wanted to say, "I am no protector. I am no hero. I am just a man who gave away his shoes." But no words came. His lips trembled and his chest ached with the weight of it all. The girl rose to her feet. Her armored guards stepped aside, bowing their heads as she approached him. She reached out, her glowing fingers brushing against his hand, and in that instant, a surge of warmth flowed through him. Images flashed in his mind. Endless stars, burning worlds, fleets of ships kneeling in unity. A vision of an empire vast and ancient bound by a code of honor, and within that vision he saw himself, not as a warrior, not as a king, but as a symbol. The man who gave kindness when no one else would. The crowd around them grew silent again. Even the soldiers of Earth, even the mothers clutching their children, felt the weight of that moment. Something bigger than war or fear was unfolding before their eyes. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to step back, to refuse, to scream that they had made a mistake. But when he looked into her eyes, silver and filled with truth, he realized this was not a mistake. She had chosen him, and the armada above the clouds was waiting for his answer. The city square was silent. The only sound came from the faint hum of the alien craft and the pounding of Daniel's heart. The girl stood before him, her silver eyes glowing, her cloak shimmering with every flicker of the street lamps. Around her, the armored guards stayed motionless, their weapons lowered but ready like statues carved from the night itself. Behind them, the giant ship hovered above the clouds, casting a shadow so vast it felt as though the sky itself had bowed. People around Daniel whispered in fear and wonder. Cameras from news reporters trembled as they zoomed in, broadcasting every second across the world. Every human watching, in every country, held their breath. The girl's voice rang out again, clear, calm, but heavy with meaning. "Protector of the weak," she said, her words flowing through a strange device on her chest that translated her alien tongue into human language. The one who gave when the world would not. The one who showed honor to royalty in disguise. Daniel's brow furrowed. Royalty? The word caught in his throat. The girl stepped closer. Her gaze never left his. "You gave your shoes to me. A stranger. A beggar in your eyes. Yet you did not walk away. You did not mock me. You gave what you had, though it left you with nothing." The crowd gasped. Some stared at Daniel with disbelief, others with awe. Soldiers lowered their weapons completely, confused and shaken. Daniel swallowed hard. His lips trembled as he whispered back, barely audible. They were just shoes. But the girl shook her head slowly. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, as if her very body rejected his words. "No, to you they were shoes. To us they were something greater. In my world, in my people's law, kindness given to one who hides their true self is the highest sign of respect. And I—" Her voice caught for the first time, softening with emotion. "I am no beggar. I am no lost child. I am heir to the star throne of the Celian Armada. I am Princess Arya." The name echoed across the square like thunder. Princess Armada. Star Throne. The words fell heavy on Daniel's shoulders. His legs felt weak. He wanted to laugh, to deny it, to wake up and find himself in bed with the rain tapping on his window. But this was no dream. This was truth spoken before the world. Arya lifted her hand. The shimmering fabric Daniel had found on his doorstep the night before rose from his pocket, pulled by invisible energy. It floated to her hand, glowing brighter as it touched her palm. She held it high and her voice carried strength again. "This is the mark of the chosen. My people left it for you, a symbol that cannot be ignored." As the fabric glowed, the sky responded. Above them, the giant ship tilted forward, its lights pulsing in rhythm with her words. Then one by one, more ships appeared, descending through the clouds. Each vessel, larger than mountains, moved with grace and power. And then they bowed. Not with words, not with sound, but with motion. Massive starships tilted, lowering their colossal frames toward Earth. The entire armada, stretching across the horizon, bent in honor of a single man. The crowd fell to their knees, stunned and terrified. Some cried, some prayed, some simply stared at Daniel as though seeing him for the first time. Daniel's body shook. His heart screamed for escape. He had done nothing to deserve this. He was not a leader, not a hero. He was just an ordinary man who had shared his shoes, but Arya's gaze never wavered. She stepped even closer, her voice dropping softer, meant only for him now. "Do you understand what you have done? You have bound yourself to our law. You showed kindness to one who could not return it. By our tradition, by the code written in our stars, you are more than a man now. You are honored by an empire that spans galaxies." Daniel whispered back, his voice breaking. "I didn't want this." Arya's eyes softened. For a moment she looked like the fragile girl from the rainy night, not the glowing princess standing before a world. "I know. That is why it matters. You gave without wanting reward. You gave because it was right. That is why you are chosen. Tears stung Daniel's eyes. He wanted to refuse, to give it all back. But how could he? When the sky was filled with ships bowing, when an alien princess stood before him with reverence in her eyes, when the entire planet now looked at him with a mix of fear and hope. Arya turned to the crowd, her voice rising again. People of Earth, hear me. We come not to conquer. We come not to destroy. We come to honor. This man, Daniel of Earth, gave freely to one he did not know. To us, that act is sacred, and so the Celian Armada bows to him and through him, to your world. A roar of whispers spread across the crowd, across television screens, across radios and broadcasts. The princess raised her hand again and the sky glowed brighter. Earth is under our protection. From this day forward, none shall harm it, for it is the home of the one we honor. Daniel's knees weakened, his vision blurred. The world spun as thousands of ships hovered in reverence, as billions of humans watched history unfold. He had given away his shoes, and now, the universe was bowing. The sky was no longer just the sky, it was alive. Above Earth, thousands of colossal ships stretched from horizon to horizon. They hovered like silent mountains of metal, each one glowing with rivers of light that pulsed in rhythm. Their presence filled the air with a hum so deep it rattled windows and shook the bones of every human standing beneath them. And then, all at once, the impossible happened. The entire fleet bent forward. Massive starships, taller than skyscrapers and wider than cities, tilted their colossal bodies toward the planet. It was not random. It was not chaos. It was a bow, deliberate, coordinated, precise. The Celian Armada, a force that had traveled across galaxies, was kneeling to Earth. The crowd in the city square gasped as one. Some fell to their knees in fear, others in awe. Soldiers lowered their weapons completely, their training shattered by the sheer scale of what they were witnessing. Mothers held their children tight, whispering prayers. Reporters forgot to speak, their cameras capturing history in silence. Daniel stood at the center of it all, trembling. His breath came short and fast. His mind screamed to deny what his eyes saw, but the truth was undeniable. The Armada was bowing. To him, beside him, Princess Arya raised her hand. Her voice carried, calm and steady, translated into every human language at once through her alien device. "This is the honor of my people," she said. "The Armada bows to those who show true strength, the strength of compassion. He gave to me when I had nothing. He honored one who was hidden, and in doing so, he honored an empire." Her words echoed across the city, then across the world. Every broadcast, every radio, every screen carried her voice. Billions of humans heard it. Daniel's legs shook. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I don't deserve this." Arya turned to him, her silver eyes soft but firm. "That is why you do. Power is nothing without humility. And you gave without asking. You gave though you had little. That is what makes you worthy." The glowing fabric she held, the mark of the chosen, pulsed brighter in her hands. As it did, the ships above glowed in response like stars answering a call. The lights rippled through the Armada in waves, each vessel bowing deeper as though the entire fleet breathed as one. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. In grand halls of power, leaders shouted at screens demanding answers. Generals clenched their fists, torn between fear and rage. Some saw salvation, others saw a trap. But ordinary people, farmers, workers, children, elders, looked up at the sky with wide eyes, and for the first time in their lives, they felt something stronger than fear. They felt wonder. A boy in Africa whispered, "They're bowing to us." An old woman in Europe crossed herself and said, "We are not alone, and they do not come with war." A soldier in America lowered his rifle and muttered, "All this for one man's kindness?" The world was breaking open. Daniel's hands shook as he covered his face. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to scream that he was no savior, no chosen one. He was just a man who could not walk past someone in need. But Arya touched his shoulder gently. Her voice was softer now, only for him. "Do you see? Your small act has become something greater. One kindness has moved an empire. And now Earth is seen through your eyes." Daniel lowered his hand slowly. The weight of her words pressed against him, heavier than the ships above. He glanced at the crowd, humans staring at him, some with hope, some with fear, all waiting for his reaction. The cameras glared like unblinking eyes, feeding his silence to billions. His lips parted, but no words came. What could he say? What could possibly carry the weight of an entire world and an entire fleet? Arya stepped forward, her cloak shimmering like starlight. She faced the crowd, her voice strong once more. "People of Earth," she declared, "you are no longer alone in the dark. You are seen, you are respected, and you are protected. From this day forward, no force shall bring war to your home, not while the Armada bows." Her guards struck their chests with their fists again, a thunderous sound like drums of war turned into drums of honor. Above them, the Armada pulsed with light, the glow spreading from one ship to another until the whole sky looked like a living galaxy. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He had never felt so small and yet so heavy with responsibility. The world was looking at him as if he were the bridge between humanity and the stars. The bow lasted for minutes that felt like eternity. Then slowly, the ships rose again, returning to their steady watch above Earth. The silence left in their wake was louder than any thunder. People began to cheer, some to cry, some to kneel. The world had just changed forever, and Daniel was standing in the center of it. But deep inside, he felt only one thought. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. The world was no longer the same. The Celian Armada had bowed, and Earth had watched. Across continents, people filled the streets, staring at the sky with awe, fear, and disbelief. Every screen replayed the moment. Every radio repeated the words of Princess Arya. Humanity now knew the truth. They were not alone, and they were under the protection of a power far beyond their own. But in the middle of all this wonder stood Daniel, trembling in the city square. His face was pale, his body heavy with a weight he never asked for. The cheers of the crowd faded into a blur. He barely heard the reporters shouting questions, the soldiers barking orders, or the people calling his name. All he could hear was the pounding of his heart and the voice inside his head screaming, "Why me?" Arya stood beside him, calm and steady. Her silver eyes never left him. To the world, she looked like a queen, radiant and powerful. But to Daniel, she was still the barefoot girl from that rainy night. A stranger he had tried to help, never expecting anything in return. Now that stranger was asking more from him than he ever thought possible. The shimmering fabric, the mark of the chosen, glowed in her hand. She raised it high for all to see. The Armada honors Daniel of Earth, but honor is only the beginning. My people seek a bond, a voice, a representative. Earth must decide, will you stand alone or will you stand with us? The words rolled across the square like thunder. Immediately, chaos erupted. Leaders watching through screens shouted into phones. Governments scrambled to debate. Some demanded Daniel accept. Others demanded he refuse. For some, this was salvation. For others, it was surrender. In the square itself, the crowd split. Some cried out with hope, "Say yes. Protect us. Unite with them." Others shouted with fear and anger, "It's a trap. They'll enslave us. Don't trust them." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to shout that he was not a leader, not a diplomat, not a hero. He was just a man. But every eye was on him. Billions of people across the planet waited for his answer. Arya lowered the glowing fabric, stepping closer. Her voice softened, meant only for him now. "You do not need to be a warrior. You do not need to be a king. You need only to be what you already are. A man who acts with kindness when it matters most. That is enough for my people, but the choice must be yours." Daniel's hands shook. His mind spun. He saw visions of Earth transformed. Alien ships hovering in peace. Technology beyond imagination, diseases cured, hunger ended. He also saw visions of fear. Humanity divided, controlled, crushed under alien rule. The weight of two futures pressed down on his shoulders. He finally whispered, his voice raw, "Why me? Why not a president or a general or someone stronger?" Arya's eyes softened. "Because power blinds them. You gave when you had nothing. That is the kind of voice my people trust. That is the kind of voice the universe needs." Daniel's throat tightened. He turned his head, looking at the humans around him. The frightened faces, the desperate eyes, the children clutching their parents. They were all waiting for him to decide their future. He clenched his fists. He thought about the rainy night, about the girl who was barefoot, cold, and alone. He thought about the shoes he had given her, the only thing he could offer at the time. He thought about how small that act was and how large it had now become. Slowly, Daniel stepped forward. The crowd hushed instantly. Even the hum of the ships above seemed to fade. He raised his voice, not strong, not commanding, but honest. I don't want power. I don't want glory. I don't want to be remembered as a hero. I only want one thing. If you promise peace, if you promise no war, if you promise to protect without controlling, then I will stand with you. The silence that followed was sharp, cutting through the air. Arya bowed her head slightly, her silver eyes shimmering with respect. Then it shall be so. She lifted the glowing fabric once more. This time it burst into radiant light, spilling across the square, across the city, across the world. Every human watching saw it. Every ship above responded, their lights pulsing brighter, filling the sky with colors like a second dawn. The Armada accepted his choice. From the farthest deserts to the tallest towers, humanity witnessed the moment Earth was no longer alone, no longer vulnerable, no longer forgotten in the dark of space. The cheers began softly, then grew louder, spreading like fire through the crowd, through the streets, through the planet. People cried, people hugged, people shouted with joy. For the first time in history, the whole world looked upward with hope instead of fear. Daniel stood still, tears running down his face. He had made the choice. A simple man, an ordinary soul, had spoken for Earth. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Protecting peace would be harder than promising it. The weight of the future rested on his shoulders now, heavier than the stars. Arya placed her hand gently on his arm. Her voice was soft but steady. You chose well, and we will honor your choice. The Armada is now Earth's shield. Daniel nodded slowly, but inside he whispered to himself, let this truly be peace. Please, let it be peace. Above them, the Armada glowed brighter like a million suns bowing in agreement. Months passed, but the night of the bow was never forgotten. The world had changed forever. The skies above Earth no longer felt empty. The Celian Armada remained, their ships drifting silently beyond the clouds like guardians watching over their new ally. No missiles were fired. No wars began. Instead, for the first time in centuries, nations lowered their weapons and looked at the stars with hope. Daniel had become a symbol, though he never asked for it. Children in schools told his story, their small voices filled with excitement. He gave his shoes to the alien princess. Street artists painted his face on walls not as a soldier or king, but as a man walking barefoot in the rain. News anchors repeated his name daily. Governments argued about his influence, and preachers called him proof that kindness was stronger than power. But Daniel himself lived quietly. He refused titles, refused riches, refused the golden palaces some leaders offered him. He stayed in his small apartment, walked the same streets, ate simple meals. To the world, he was a legend. To himself, he was still just Daniel, a man who once gave away his shoes, yet, even in his quiet life, reminders of the new world surrounded him. Shimmering alien drones floated in hospitals, curing diseases once thought untouchable. Children who could not walk now ran in playgrounds, laughing with joy. Fields once dry and barren bloomed with green crops, watered by alien technology that pulled moisture from the air. Hunger began to fade, slowly but surely. The Armada gave much but never forced. They did not demand worship. They did not take control. They stood as shields as promised. And whenever questions arose, whenever leaders doubted, it was Daniel they turned to. One evening, Daniel walked through the city as the sun set. The streets were alive with music, children chasing each other, families smiling. Above them, one of the smaller Celian ships hovered quietly, its glowing lights reflecting on the glass towers. People no longer screamed at the sight of them. They waved. They laughed. Some even called the ships friends. Daniel's bare feet touched the pavement. He had grown used to walking without shoes. People whispered as he passed, some bowing, some thanking him. But Daniel only smiled politely and kept walking. He did not want worship. He wanted to remain human, ordinary, grounded. At the end of the street, he stopped. Rain had begun to fall soft and steady, just like the night it all began. Drops tapped on his shoulders, slid down his face. He lifted his head, letting the rain wash over him. In that moment, memory returned. The shivering girl under the broken lamp, her silver eyes filled with sorrow, her feet bare on the cold ground. He remembered the hesitation, the fear, and then the choice, and to give away his shoes. Such a small act, yet one that had carried across the stars. A soft glow appeared beside him. He turned, and there she was. Arya, not in her royal cloak this time, but dressed simply, her feet bare as his. Her silver eyes shone with warmth. "You still walk without shoes," she said gently. Daniel smiled faintly. "I don't need them anymore. I gave them away, and maybe that's how it was meant to be." Arya stepped closer, the rain dripping from her hair, her glowing veins faint beneath her skin. "My people still speak of you. They tell your story across our worlds. They call you the giver, the protector, the one who honors." Daniel shook his head. "I don't want those names. I'm not a hero. I was just someone who didn't want to see another person suffer." Arya studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "That is why they honor you. Because true strength does not come from weapons or thrones. It comes from kindness, and you carry that strength." The rain fell harder. Around them, people hurried for shelter, but Daniel and Arya stood still, silent in the storm. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "If there is one thing I want, one thing I ask, it's this. Promise me no matter what happens, your people will never use their power to control mine. Promise me this will always be peace." Arya's silver eyes softened. She placed her hand gently over his heart. "I promise. As long as the stars shine, the Armada will be Earth's shield, not its master." Daniel closed his eyes, letting her words sink into him. For the first time in months, he felt truly at peace. The storm eased, the rain slowing to a gentle drizzle. Arya stepped back, her glowing form fading into the mist, vanishing as quietly as she had once appeared. Daniel stood alone again, barefoot on the wet street. But this time he smiled, because he knew he was not truly alone. The world would remember him forever. Not as a king, not as a soldier, not even as a chosen one, but as a man who gave his shoes to a stranger, a man who proved that kindness, even the smallest act, could echo across galaxies. And somewhere above the clouds, the Armada bowed once more, their lights flickering like stars in silent agreement.